Hi, Dan.
I'm excited to be here. I want to take a minute to thank everyone for having me here and then putting this event on. I was thinking about as Pat was presenting. I think what was my first camp at Hilton. The staff that we had down there, pretty impressive. So to see like these types of events, thinking back, I mean, we were doing this type of stuff. And the people in this room are going to be the people that you kind of stay in contact with, use as resources and things like that. So it's definitely exciting. The networking, I mean, this is why I love this field so much. I definitely want to thank Mike. I think, like all of you, Mike helped me get my first opportunity. And anytime I had a crossroads in my career, even as out of the blue as it was, I called him. And he always returned that phone call and gave me, advice. So as far as listening to Pat talk, I love the way you think. I love the way you approach training. The three people that you spoke about, I mean, those are my heroes: Tom Myers, Jonda, Shirley Sharman. Very, very fortunate to see Sharman speak a couple years ago at GSMPG. If you haven't seen her speak, you got it. Her presence is different. She's got that cute little old lady, grandma type of presence. But the messages she's delivering, I mean, it just hit home on a lot of things. And then the Jonda approach, a lot of what we're doing with our warm-up and our corrective work, and like Jill spent a little bit of time over in Northeast with us. Mike, you've seen a little bit. I mean, we spent a lot of time on that warm-up, especially with our hockey guys, field hockey. Even rowers. I mean, they're spending 20 to 30 minutes before they even hit the weights, getting warmed up, activating, and making sure that they're ready to handle that load. But for me, my approach, I'm geeky. All right, I want to collect information. I want to base my decisions off of that information, and I'm a visual learner, so I'll kind of show you how we're trending results. And then how we're applying our inspiratory muscle training to our performance, but also to our dysfunction. Now, I want to start before we get into any slides. I'm very, very fortunate. All right, Pat said it in his presentation. Make friends. I have friends. So what we're doing at Northeastern is we have our athletes come in. They're doing a pre-participation exam. We're ripping through that 500 athletes, and we're red flagging everyone. Or not everyone, but anyone that comes up with dysfunction. That way we're able to kind of just send them on to the right care model, and we're able to get that system going. So a lot of these things, I mean, this is how I think, the easiest way to implement some of the IMT stuff into a group setting. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges. But you need to have friends. Good. So let's get started. We're looking at promoting performance and correcting dysfunction with the IMT. I have the Bruce Lee picture up there because I think this guy was 40 years ahead of his time. All right. Pat talked about Stu McGill and that pulse. That was pulse. This guy was able to have great posture, joint centration. He was able to produce force throughout that range of motion and twitch right back into it. And that's athleticism. So we can validate our programs with strength numbers and things like that, but unless you have those qualities, there's an upper ceiling to what you're going to be able to do. If we can go to the next slide. So our objectives, and we're looking at our warm-up from a corrective standpoint here. We'll look at the IMT benefits, the mechanical benefits after, but right here, we want to warm up, use the IMT, clean and efficient movement patterns. I think number one, if you have dysfunction, you got to improve the way you breathe. We need that anchor point there at that lumbo-pelvic junction. If that's not stable, then we're going to have compensatory patterns with a lot of our basic movements. So, clean and efficient movement patterns, core stability, improve range of motion, joint centration, improve power production, because now we're getting an appropriate sequence of innervation. You can't generate that force if you're having those compensatory patterns. What ends up happening is your primary movers are now shifted, and now you're overloading the capacity of that tissue. We're going to have breakdown. All right? So like Pat said, dysfunction creates more dysfunction. So once you get on that slippery slope, so we use this pretty much every day. We're going to go through and we're going to hopefully set and activate those patterns the right way. That way when we increase the intensity, hopefully we're not losing that pattern. Lumbo-pelvic coordination, we talked about it. 3 main movements that we're looking at to evaluate: hip hinge, squat, and then push-up. We might modify that now that I saw that. What was that? Push-up? No. Savage? No. What was it? Dominant crushing. That crushing push-up. So, and then of course we want to look at strength development in our athletes. Once we know that they're biomechanically strong, sure, I want to load them up and want to develop strength. But, and this has been communicated to us at Northeastern, we're being evaluated on our injury rates. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of those things and we're not losing games due to injury. So one of the best stats that I have over there, and I'm most proud of, I did lose it down the stretch this year though, was our field hockey team. So this was the third, in 3 years, we just had our first game missed due to injury down the stretch, an avulsion fracture. So up until that point, we had seen a lot of soft tissue injuries in that group. They've really embraced this warm-up stuff. I think anytime you keep them off the racks, they're pretty excited. But they really embraced the coaching cues. They've wrapped their mind around it, and they've gotten better at it. And their strength numbers have also improved too. So it's been beneficial. Let's go on to the next one. So our hockey normal. We're using the IMT, and I'll go into that. We're actually using a resisted apparatus, or an apparatus that resists the flow during inspiration. All right, we're using Power Breathe and the TIER system. The Power Breathe is a portable device. It really looks like half historical. There's a dial on there that will change the diameter, increasing the resistance or lightening the resistance. So we're going through all of our stuff here with that Power Breathe. So where you see IMT, we're doing resisted breathing. So we'll come in, we'll start with our soft tissue stuff. They're on their own when they do that. Then we go into our mobility. They have their Power Breathe. All right, we're trying to increase contractibility through the core, especially through that lower abdominal wall. All right, provide an anchor point for that and make sure that we're going through full range of motion. Corrective. When we go into our corrective movements, a lot of the stuff that we just went through out there on the floor, we're not doing anything quite that advanced with that many coaching cues, but we are adding the resisted breathing to a lot of our warm-up activities, all right? So, lunge, squat, all of our hip hinge patterns, push-up, we're trying to activate before we increase the load. And then we'll go into our stability work. That'll be resisting, all right? We're trying to increase the contractibility of those muscles to help increase stability. When we go into our dynamic stuff, now this is where we start going into that pulse work. Now we want to try to use like some of the martial arts principles to that, where we're generating force, contracting, staying aligned, relaxing, and now being ready for that next rep. But if you look,
it works. What happened? Kev ruined it.
But what I like to see with the IMT is it's almost the Valsalva maneuver, right? We're building up the pressure. We're building up the pressure through an enhanced contractibility of those core muscles, but we're also building up that pressure mechanically, correct? We're getting more air in there. We have a greater tidal volume, so we see the pressure increase that way. But instead of building up that pressure for stability so we can increase the load, we're looking at increasing that range of motion without compensation or cross-shoulder, all right? So, this is something that we've just started doing, incorporating advanced technologies to promote the zone, okay? Everyone always talks about, I was in the zone, I was in the zone. In my opinion, the zone is being able to process information have very little impact on the sympathetic tone and be able to react it. So what we're doing is, and I'll show you the tier system in a second, which gives us biofeedback. You'll see the power breathe up there, so it'll make a little bit more sense. But we're using rhythmic movements combined with our breathing patterns, combined with reaction time. So has anyone seen the Dynavision board with the lights, random lights, reaction time? So we're using that along with the Octo here, which is just pretty much a gait system. We're going very simple, basic movement, march in place. So we can track that, we can get a baseline with no other stimulus there. Then we can now add the breathing patterns and see how our movement patterns have been affected.
Are you going to set that up?
We can. So, I mean, I'm here to play, so whatever you want to do. So we're looking at that, see what changes. Then we're looking at the reaction time and seeing what happens to all three. So I think what we want to see, obviously, is that our athletes are able to handle the different stimuluses and not see change to breathing or change to the reaction time. And maybe it's more appropriate to say drastic change, because you are going to see change. But Bruce Lee, again, learn the principle, abide by the principle, and dissolve the principle. In short, enter a mold without being caged in it, obey the principle while being bound by it, learn, master, and achieve. And that's what I want to see my athletes do in that controlled setting. When they go on the field, the ice, the court, whatever it is, they're in a reactionary and unpredictable setting. So I want to be able to see them handle multiple stimulus without seeing those patterns go to shit. And normally we do, especially with our young athletes. Now getting into specifically the INT stuff that we're doing. Here are the respiratory muscles and the axilla. We have inspiration, sternocleidomastoid, scalenes, internal and external intercostals, diaphragm. We then have expiration, internal intercostals, external and internal oblique, TAs, RAs, and then we have the pelvic floor, right? Let's see, inspiration is breathing. You just hit next. Wait, graphics there. So breathe, stabilize. Now you go to the next. This right here is the power breathe. We're actually trying to get in, and all of our athletes have this. All right, we order those. For them, they keep them. They come into the training sessions with them.
How much it costs?
$33, something like that. Now, the ones that we're looking at, and you'll see on the tier gives you biofeedback, so you can see what maximum inspiratory pressure is, sustained max is. But the power breathe is actually coming out with portable. The biggest problem we've had with the tier, I don't know how old it is, but I think it runs off of Microsoft 98. Like, I mean, we have some antiques, just dinosaurs in there. So when something goes wrong, you got to blow on the floppy disk and put it back in. Plug out. No, there's some challenges with that. And then it's not portable. So if we were able to use these, get the biofeedback, now the tier system becomes unnecessary. But what helps, and I was going to ask you this earlier, the biggest challenge you must have with some of those are the group set. If you have a bigger group, I got 27 guys, all right, 22 field hockey players, and then the other team I work with is men's rowing, and there's 50 of them. So setting this stuff up in that group setting can be challenging. One of the benefits that we have is make friends. We're able to use our ATs and our PTs to set up the individual tier sessions, and now they're able to work one-on-one with somebody and they're really mastering those techniques. So I don't have to spend a lot of time. I spend some time working on being real clean with those breathing patterns. We have people, whether it's the DNS work that they do, but those, by the time they get to me, our athletes are pretty clean. And our AT, Steve Clark, who's a DPT now, you know, he's one of the best around. So being able to work with him is a huge benefit. And here's the tier. So now there you see the dinosaur on the right comes out. That's a mouthpiece right there. Comes right off. And then you're actually able to see what the feedback is on there. All right? And you're working at about 80% of your maximum ventilatory capacity. Next. Here's all the studies that we've used to look at the INT. Probably most commonly, the Nickel-Burrow, inspiratory flow, resistant loading, improves respiratory muscle function. And we go on to the next. Here's some of that from that study there. You can see maximum inspiratory pressure at week 1. It almost doubled, no, it does double from week 1 to week 10. And then sustained maximum pressure almost doubles from week 1 to week 10. So you can at least get feedback. I'm a strength coach. A lot of that stuff, I don't know what it means. But I let the smarter people talk to the athletes about it. Next. So with IMT, we know VO2 max is going to be lower after, right? So mechanically, we're getting greater tidal volume in there, less residual volume. Ventilation, same thing, more greater inspiratory capacity, so ventilation is going to be lower. Next, heart rate, lower. Because of the change in pressure, when we exhale, we get a greater venous return, we then get a greater stroke volume, greater cardiac output, and heart rate's low. Same thing with lactate, greater blood flow. Here's that Nickel-Burrow. If we look at the left bar graph there, pre and post, you're looking at with the inspiratory training, 5-minute increase almost in running time to exhaustion. And then we go to the next. And this right here is what we did at Northeastern with our hockey team. So this is like 4 or 5 years ago. And it's obviously not that great, but if you look at it, control group, no IMT, experimental group, they did 2 sessions with the tier, 30 minutes, twice a week. They did that post-practice, and then our baseline approach testing was pretty much a fast test on ice. Has anyone seen the fast test? This is actually, if anyone works with hockey, this is actually a pretty cool test. Pretty much the beat test on ice. And they're going goal line to goal line, you have the CD, and they just have to be behind the line. Timing up that becomes a little bit more challenging with guys skating because it's not a true stop and start with timing it up. They actually kind of get behind that goal line. Good, we go right from next. So you can see, in the control group compared, we saw significance, we saw an increase there in maximum inspiratory pressure from baseline to post, go right to the next. Sustained, we see increased significance, go right on to the next. Accumulated sustained inspiratory pressure, increase, and then capacity, tidal volume. And we see that slightly. And then here's the fast lengths completed within, and we see a slight increase there. We see a drastic increase with some of them. I don't know why we're starting so low to begin with, but I think when you look at VO2 in hockey players through the season, that actually traditionally stays the same, if not gets lower. All right, so most research says that. So to even show an increase with very little load added to their training load. I mean, they're in there for 50 minutes a week, conditioning's improving, and you haven't really taxed them that much more. And we go right on to that. So this is just the estimated VO2. And on. So what we saw, improved strength, endurance, and power of the inspiratory muscles, delayed respiratory muscle fatigue. And that's really, we want to resist fatigue. We need to work on our strength, endurance, postural muscles, because fatigue equals instability. All right? And that's when we start to see those compensatory patterns when we break into dysfunction. But, try to think what the next slide. The dysfunction we have to also understand. We're going to see change in patterns over a season, especially a hockey season, undoubtedly. So everyone has dysfunction. It's something that's going to change. We have to learn how to manage that. All right? peaks and valleys. That's why I like what we're doing, and I'll show you the graphs that we have where we're creating trend graphs. We're evaluating them biomechanically real quick, looking at range of motion and muscle imbalances. And then we're also using the Opto, which we use for the gait print, but we're also using that for sport-specific patterns, a single leg hop, continuous, maybe a ski jump, single leg, brevis versus glute med, or even a high for time. So what we're doing throughout the season, whether it's every third week or every 2 weeks, is we're getting a little print on these guys. We know, hey, high, this is how many contacts they had. Or they had 12 contacts more on their right than their left. Or their contact time is increasing, and we can see some of those things. But let's go right on to the next one. This is actually just the feedback that they gave. The first question was, I strongly agree. It didn't fit on there, I'm sorry. If you look, though, they all had favorable comments on this stuff. And we did this 4 years ago. I've had absolutely no problems motivating my athletes to do this anymore. And now they're all doing it. Where it started with hockey with this study, they continued with it with the 5 that were on the control group. The last question, would you suggest the IMT to your teammates? They all responded yes. It also helped that we saw a correlation between our best breathers and goals for assists, scoring chances, things like that. So once they saw that, I mean, these people will, they'll sacrifice a lot of chicken. It's going to be more goals. And this is our trend graph here. All right. So what we're looking at is imbalances or poor range of motion, asymmetries right to left. So standalone, no, I don't think this is standalone. All right. I'm not going to look at this and be, oh no, this athlete is. No. But over time, I can see whether that's a positive or a negative slope. So I know how to handle it. And if I don't, I have professional resources there at Northeastern and now even outside where I can refer someone to the right person and get that help. And that's what, I mean, I don't want to be, you know, I'm a geeky guy. I read all the time, you know, not a lot of social lifestyle. Not crazy exciting, all right? But, you know, I get wild at work. So, this stuff here, you know, I want to work with my athletes. I want to get them better. I want to be boots on the ground, all right? I don't want to be messing around with them on, you know, trying to correct this. Because that's not me. I'm not going to do the best job possible. You know, and that's like putting, I don't know, fourth liner out for the power. Like, why would I do that? Right? Let me get somebody who's skilled there. But we're able to see red flags through here, and then hopefully address them at the, you know, before they result in pain or before you continue down that dysfunctional continuum. If you go to the next, you'll see some of the Opto reports. So this is Opto report, and you'll see these numbers aren't great. You're looking at contact times here. I believe this is the high. Those two real low numbers, those are some sort of outlier there, so we get rid of those. But you can kind of see that not very consistent through that graph. Now, if that graph gets worse next time, or worse the time after that, then we're going to treat it. All right? And then same thing, height. Height for the high, we wouldn't really worry about. I put it in there, but I probably shouldn't have. Because the height's always going to look like that. Let's go right on to the next. If you look at the flight times there, now this would be something that we want to kind of keep an eye on, and not overly good or consistent graph. All right. So we take this, we take the previous test with the range of motion and the manual muscle test in there, and we sit down and try to see what's going on. But if you look at the printout here, we're taking average, and that's contact. First column there is contact, height, contact, power, height, and then pace. So we're collecting a lot of information throughout the semester. The biggest problem that we've had, and is management. And I think we've been doing or trying to do this. All right, we're not there. All right, we talk about the assessments and all those things. I mean, we're doing some cool things. We're identifying some things, and we're definitely catching athletes, before they get injured. The first time we did this biomechanical test, the previous one, I had a kid from British Columbia, great hockey player, awesome hands. Physically, not exactly a workout warrior. All right, he was more of the ones that like to pop the top after, the comes out. But did a pretty good job for me. Got stronger. But what we saw was it was his left leg. And I think it was like a 24% difference there. If you're looking at the Tyler research, I mean, that's way out of whack. So we told him right away, hey, you have a problem. We tested him December 27th. This was after we got back from Christmas. His numbers were crazy rough. Far worse than what they were at the beginning of the semester. So tested him, gave him the intervention, and told him, like, you got to get your shit together. You got to get this fixed. So gave him the program, and I'm not, I used to run around the weight room screaming at people and yelling and stuff like that. That's not me anymore. I like the teaching side of things. I like the coaching side that way, and I'm going to try to guilt trip the shit out of my athletes. Like, you're the athlete. This is what you should do. If you don't want to, that's fine. I mean, just going to work every day sucks. So as long as they know that, and I think with the co-op program, the academics, college athletes there, they should be taking advantage of that. So I'm not overly motivating anything. I try to motivate intrinsically through information. But this guy kind of went off on his own. Checked in with him every week. No, I'm going to start. He ended up tearing that right before the NCAAs that year. And he did it first period, and that kid came up by the end of the first. He was already up, sat down right next, head right down, and we really had very little adherence issues with this sense. So it was kind of a good story, predicting that. Would have liked to have him for that game, but at least we made progress going forward. And we corrected the issue. So his numbers when he came back the next year were far better. I don't know if we're going to be able to see this on here. This is our corrective stuff. So based off of the trend graphs, specific dysfunction, we're prescribing things through this list here. You'll see glenohumeral, scapulothoracid, hip extension, abduction, core stability, and then ankle work. All right, we have our movement minimums up top. Pretty much like I said, we're going for that hip hinge, that squat, and then that push-up with good lumbo-pelvic coordination. So we'll prescribe things with the IMT here. So, and there's a progression that works through there. We might start with the tier, getting extra work through there, and then progress to the power breathe and doing their specific corrective work through with the resistant breather in there. All right. Then movements. So those are our movements that we're going through, we're progressing through. This is how we're progressing. We're starting, especially if it's a neuro issue, we're going bilateral on to unilateral, contralateral, ipsilateral. We're trying to progress the complexity of that movement to get multi-joint contractions. And then our rep schemes, everything's eccentric, temporal, or volume. We're trying to activate and build strength endurance through those muscles. Fatigue equals instability equals compensatory patterns or dysfunction. So we can kind of go through. I can actually pop up the Opto, go through some of the different tests that we're doing on there, look at the rhythmic movements and things like that. Or we can go through some of the corrective work with the IMT. The only problem is I don't have any of the power breathers there. And as you can understand, once you give out a power breather, it's theirs. They own it. So we don't change. But I would like to kind of go through what our warm-up is, how we're progressing through, how we're focusing on stability with the inspiratory training, and then how we're going into that pulse stuff, like McKechnie trying to create greater force throughout that greater range of motion. But any questions on that stuff so far?
Well, you can see it, like, so we're having this breathing session while we're doing exercise simultaneously.
Yes. That's with the corticals. So we're using the tier system to kind of go through, teach them how to breathe, and I'm really letting sports medicine handle that. All right? You know, you try to do it in a group setting. You have hand on the chest, hand on the. It just doesn't work. You know, the DNS stuff. Oh, by the way, a little quick story. So DNS, you saw the guy on the table with the funny face that he showed. So this guy's on the table, all right, and they're doing some trigger point stuff, right? I don't even know what it was. So all of a sudden, it was like a Disney movie, like The Hulk. He starts like involuntary contracting, like pushing himself up. Everyone starts like running away from the table. I wasn't sure if I should go for the door or what was happening, but it's a pretty big guy to be having involuntary contractions. But yeah, we're going through pretty much all of our activation stuff and part of our warm-up with the resistant breathing. Yes?
Is this just pre-lift, or with hot you doing this stuff pre-practice?
We lift before practice. So, but no, only pre-lift.
So it's not like your whatever your pre-practice routine every day, just being on the days that you're lifting pre-lift.
Well, yes and no. So they'll come in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday they should be doing some of this stuff on their own. I don't think they always do, but at least Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I know that they're coming in, meeting these, and then going right out. So this is part of their pre-lift, pre-practice warm-up stuff. But I want to kind of, a lot of like when you were talking about, maybe on a more elementary level, I want to turn on muscles. I want to make sure that this person's moving correctly before I go and hammer up the load. All right, with clean squat. And we're a modified tier program. So I'm always going total, lower, upper, and then we can rotate kind of through there. We do a lot of unilateral, a lot of explosive type of stuff. We change our recipes through there. But a lot of our ancillary or secondary work is now being done through that corrective sheet with the IMT. And now we're getting warmed up, we'll go through our core work, we're doing a shit ton of core work, go into our plyo stuff, and then boom, hit your clean, maybe a one-legged squat, and then we'll do some sort of horizontal push with some posterior work, and then boom, you're done. Because I'm confident enough in their movement patterns and all that secondary work we've done leading up there. The one thing I do get concerned with, and we don't always set up our program that way, because I don't want, if we're too fatigued when we get in there. But we try to track those things, and until I have a omega wave, that'd be best. But yeah.
So we've been using straws and balloons in the hand technique. I mean, that's what we got. So.
For my party? For my party?
For my party, yeah.
Well, a lot of times with the athlete, you don't need resistance. Like they don't know how to do it anyways. So get down, improve that contractibility. All right, make sure those muscles are firing. Now you at least have some sort of stability through there, and then after that point, now you can start changing the resistance and trying to progress through.
So you wouldn't say we're wasting our time using
God, no, I think Cal's using snorkels out there. So he's, who knows what Cal's
Who knows what Cal's
Turn that camera off, no. What else? Do we want to go through some of those things?
Yeah, we can talk
Yes,
about
good.
these.
Let's pull on